everybody, and welcome to We'd Rather Be Reading. I'm Leah.
And I'm Anita.
What? Where's Jerica?
Surprise, I'm not her!
Oh gosh, no, this is silly. I do see that you're not Jerica.
I look a little bit different and a different accent.
A little bit different, it's true. Obviously, like I said last week, Jerica busy with baby. God, like, priorities.
Seriously, this is... Shouldn't she be reading?
In all honesty, though, I believe she's probably reading with baby. She was posting all these pictures during her labor from the hospital, and she had AirPods in, and I'm like, "What are you listening to?"
I mean, that's our girl.
Are you listening to Court? She's like, "No." I was like, "What?"
That is our girl. I mean, midway through labor, she's like, "Sorry, can I finish this chapter?"
Yeah, it's like, "You want me to push now?" But it's exciting.
It's the good part.
Let me just get through this sex scene.
I mean, baby, sex scenes, they're sort of connected in a way.
It's true. Anyways, we're happy to have you here, so welcome to We'd Rather Be Reading.
Thank you. I'm a fan of the people and the podcast, and it's amazing to be a co-host. I feel very honored.
Excellent. You're our first ever co-host. So this is exciting. And you're also our favorite friend, so this is all good. And you're here because, well, I'm forcing you to read some Holly Black.
Yes, this is my first introduction to Holly Black, and I'm very thankful that you introduced me to her.
Good, because Holly Black is the best. She's my ride or die. And I love Holly Black. What can I say? So today we're going to talk about the Coldest Girl in Coldtown, which it's kind of old now. It was first published on September 3rd in 2013. So it is, it's like freaking 9 years ago. That's like positively ancient. It's like my daughter... She bought a new pair of jeans a month or so ago. And you know what these freaking jeans are called? 90s jeans. I'm like, how awful is this? It made me feel 400 years old, approximately.
Yeah.
90s
wasn't even that long ago.
So this book's from 2013, which I guess you can tell from the use of cell phones, which is usually the thing that dates you the most. Like, they all need laptops to get online. I'm like, no, do you really know? I mean, I guess there were iPhones back in 2014, but not everyone had them. No. And you can actually, like, at many points in this book, she fits a phone in her bra, and I'm like, yeah.
Not gonna work.
Really? Whew, that's gonna be big in there. Give your bra boobs a funny shape, man.
Or like, how big are your boobs? You can hide a phone in there.
Yeah, like I would not succeed in that. Not even close. It's just, you should know your limitations when it comes to stuff you can hide in your bra. And a phone is definitely way past mine.
Yeah, modern day phones, limited space.
I'm more, paper money size.
But yeah, that was my first note that I wrote. Like, 2013, like, how did I miss this book and this author? Like, I don't know. I feel like I've had, like, a piece missing in my literature evolution, and now it's been found. I'm just like, who is this person?
She has written more than 30 fantasy books, so you have some catching up to do, girl.
Yeah, clearly.
She's actually most famous probably for her middle school aged books. So she wrote the Spiderwick Chronicles, for example.
Which I was amazingly surprised by, one of my favorite things ever.
Yeah, so she's she writes a lot for the middle school age, but she also writes a lot of YA. And on this note, I think I've talked about this before, but she's coming out with her first adult book now in March. Now in March, The Book of Night. I am beyond excited for this.
Next month.
Like 5th of March, like less than a month away or so. So I think it's 5th of March. I'm not entirely sure. She was posting it on Instagram, but it's in March anyways. I'm like, these are American dates, so it says 5/3. I'm like, that's March. That is, or is it May? Frick, I don't know. Whatever. It's coming out. It's coming out. It's coming out this spring anyways. If it's in May, then fucking hate the way Americans write dates. Can I just say that? It is
like, why could
not logical.
Could you be any more confusing?
Oh god. Oh god. Like 9/11 is like 9th of November, people. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Regardless, back to this. Holly Black is an American author, which is probably why she writes the dates a stupid way. And she has more than 30 published fantasy novels. And I would personally say, but I think I'm not alone in saying this, that she is the queen of fairies. And the way she writes fairies and like fairy tales, books of the folk is just amazing. Like, a lot of people would say like, oh, Sarah J. Maas and stuff, and I'm like, no, there's not enough freaking rules. And I think this is my thing with Holly Black. Like, she is all about the freaking rules. She has all of the fairy rules. Like, they cannot lie, they're like dangerously beautiful, but they're very aloof and they're cruel, and they're all of these things.
All the fairy folk tales and folklore that we grew up with. It's not just mishmash. It's
exactly. And then another thing, like Jerica and I disagree on certain books, and she likes Holly Black, but she doesn't love Holly Black like I do. She is more in the Sarah J. Maas camp, and I think this is where we differ, is that I prefer my books to be a little bit more subtle in a way. Like, the romance is there, but you kind of have to look for it, and it's not super in your face, graphic sex, all of this and that, but it's there and it's simmering. And I also like that...
It's a little bit more delicate.
Yeah. And I also like that like in the romance aspects of Holly Black's book, we're going to talk about it here with The Coldest Girl in Coldtown, but particularly with her fairy tales, like I love the Folk of the Air books, which is the Cruel Prince, the Wicked King, and the Queen of Nothing. I will not spoil it, but there's a romance in there, and it's a human girl and a fairy boy. And it's also here very clear why he loves her, because she is independent, she's strong, she's all of these things, and she doesn't want him just because he is a fairy or just because he is this. And it's like...
Just because he's this mythical creature.
Yeah,
or
whereas I find a lot of Sarah J. Maas, I mean, definitely falls into this, where her main character starts off as an average regular girl, but then she becomes the most special of the most special of the most special, and she's most likely a goddess too, if she wasn't special enough with all the special she was, you know.
More authors are guilty of that. We mentioned a little bit before, like how Stephanie Meyer does the same with Bella Swan. How suddenly she goes from being this clumsy human being to being the most coolest vampire.
Yeah, but yeah, for sure, she's special. When she becomes a vampire, she's like super special. But another example, which Jerica and I will talk a lot about when we get to discussing court, is if you've read the Tracy Wolf books, Grace, the main girl in these books, she is like, it's like Tracy Wolf's get greedy with her abilities. So it's not just Grace, it's everyone who's friends with Grace are the most special of the most special. So if you're a vampire, you're the most powerful of all the vampires in forever. And if you're a witch, you're the most powerful of. And if you're this, you're probably a demigod too. And maybe a little sprinkling of this. And it's like,
you can't just be... they're deadly good looking as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. You can't just be like one thing. Like, you have to be the most special of the most special. And Sarah J. Maas, like in the Court of Thorns and Roses and all of what they're called, the court books.
Yeah.
I mean, she gets like a grain of everyone's power, making her the most special. And then she's the most special because of this. And then it's like, yeah, it's okay to just be not the most special, but to still be loved by these people. Like, without falling into the Sarah from Whistler problem of
Sarah from Whistler?
Sorry, you're not versed in the Sarah from Whistler?
No, tell me.
Sarah from Whistler is another one of my pet peeves, which is where the absolutely regular, mostest regular person you will ever find will ensnare like a god or a vampire or, you know, the most dangerous of the most dangerous. They will never settle down for anyone. But then he meets this 45-year-old regular average Joe from Sarah from Whistler, 30 years old, who's a firefighting lady, and he will fall madly in love with her and stop plaguing the world. Like, what? Why? What did she do? Why is she special? Like, I don't get it. And this was...
So Sarah from Whistler is not even like brave and independent and...
I mean, she's probably those things, but not more than anyone else. And I think this is the problem. Like, Sarah from Whistler is your average Jane managing to snare someone, and it's never explained why she's managing to snare someone. And this is more the Bella thing.
Yeah, that's true. That aligns like, a bit more with that.
Bella is a Sarah from Whistler, for sure. She's like
she's a Bella from Forks.
average girl, and all of a sudden he should be eating her because her blood smells good to him, but instead he will fall in love with her and watch her sleep and sneak into her room, which is so creepy.
Only cool because he's a vampire and good looking. If he was a normal person, for sure. Hashtag stalker.
Yeah, but Sarah from Whistler is the thing, and we read one of our gifted books this summer where there was a sex trafficking book. I don't know if you listened to that episode. It was one of our summer specials.
No,
it was The Perilous Road to Her. It was one of our gifted books, and it was about, I mean, it's a horrible book as far as like
content
people
and story
being
and,
like kidnapped and sold into sex slavery and like forced prostitution and all of this and that. But we had a 30-year-old girl from like Toronto or Ottawa or whatever who was taken and out of like a whole house of like ladies who had been taken and sold into sex slavery. She gets like plucked by like the main guy to live in his super special mansion when only like the top girls get to live in Los Angeles. And I'm like, but why her? She's like 30 something. Like, I'm just saying, if you're gonna pluck someone and you have hundreds of stolen women, like, are you really gonna pluck like the average Jane regular person who was a police officer, or are you maybe going to pluck, you know, I mean, not that I condone sex trade, like prostitution for any, you know, like slavery, any of this
let's
shit,
face
obviously, but
they're just not there for their personalities.
No, and I mean, I think if you're gonna pluck, then you're probably gonna do the one that's like the highest rated, which unfortunately will probably be too young,
all the
too pretty,
things.
too, you know, like these people. You're not gonna pluck the average 30-year-old from Toronto. Like it's just not the person you would pick to be in your special mansion. And this
sounds a bit questionable.
It's a Sarah,
the whole book actually.
A Sarah from Whistler situation. But enough, I digress. We're going back to Holly Black. Holly Black lives in New England with her family, and her house has a secret library, so I am already super freaking jealous.
I saw a photo of her, and surprisingly, she has the same blue hair in that photo that I imagine two of our characters in the story, Midnight and Winter, to have.
Jenny and Jack.
Jenny and Jack. They're not called Jenny and Jack. It's Midnight and Winter. They'll be triggered.
They will be triggered.
Especially Midnight.
No, she changes her hair quite a lot. Holly Black is like, I am like a serious fangirl. I think out of all the people, if I got to meet someone where I would literally like scream and faint, it's probably Holly Black. Like, I am
Holly, if you happen to be listening, this is where you get that reaction from.
Yeah, it would be me. I'd be like, oh my god, I love you so much, and then I'd faint. It will be embarrassing, but whatever. So the cover of this book, The Coldest Girl in Coldtown, is just this black background with like this bluish, purplish tint going around a hand.
It looks like old school wallpaper.
Yeah, it does actually.
Or like that you would find in palaces and royal houses from way back then.
We used to have this kind of wallpaper in my house, in my apartment in Montreal.
Did you grow up in a palace?
No, we had like an accent wall. And the funny part about this accent wall is my father-in-law came to help us put this up. And it was when my son was a baby, so I wasn't allowed to be a part of that. So I was like resting, chilling with the baby, and then I walk by and I look in and I'm like, why are you guys putting it upside down? And they were like, whoops. They thought I would notice. It's like the first thing I noticed. I'm like, why is the wallpaper up?
I mean, they should know you better. You are a detail-orientated person. Hashtag continuity.
For sure. But it's just the hand with the writing, The Coldest Girl in Coldtown. So,
yeah.
I mean, based on this cover, would you pick up this book?
Yes.
What would you assume that it was about?
I would assume that it's vampires, just because I'm a fiction reader, and I assume cold with vampires.
Fair enough.
And then I would have picked it up because I like books that are where the female character, or the lead is a female character.
Yep.
And the author's name, Holly Black itself, would attract me to it, just because I like things that aren't too elaborate and doesn't take me too long to figure out how to pronounce.
Fair enough. I'm not sure I would pick this up based on the cover, honestly. I would probably be like, ugh, pretentious. But then knowing it's Holly Black, I mean, I'd read anything that Holly Black wrote. Like, send me your grocery list, lady. Yeah, I'd read them too. I'd love them. 5 stars on Goodreads, for sure. Anyways, did you have anything else to say about Holly Black?
So when I was looking this up, because I read this book a few months ago after Leah recommended it, and I sat next to her and immediately downloaded it so I could get it. And then I was
as you should have.
As I should have. And I just wanted to like recap a little bit what it was about. And then I found that Coldtown and the premise of Coldtown, all of that, is based on a short story that she wrote and published in 2009. By the same name, but it's about the characters Matilda and Julian.
All right.
Which ring a bell. So I don't know if they're in the Coldest Girl in Coldtown, but something about them rings a bell. So I've downloaded it and I will be listening to this publishing of this. It's actually part of an anthology where it's a bunch of different authors, and it's called The Eternal Kiss, 13 Vampire Tales of Blood and Desire.
Excellent.
So
That's
so she
cool.
basically took the same premise and wrote this this single book or this book about that same setting but a different character story.
Cool.
So I'm very curious to see in the earlier version of it how it's about, and like
I don't think Matilda and Julian are in this book. They don't ring a bell. In that case, they're very much side characters. But
but I don't know. Somewhere when I saw, maybe it was something else I read that had a Matilda and a Julian in it. I don't know. But I've got it, and I will be starting to listen to it as soon as we're done here
You'll
today.
have to come back and tell us what it's about.
Sounds great to me. And side note, just because it mentioned one of my favorite other authors, Marie Van Schneider.
Okay.
She is also one of the authors that contributed to this other book. And she was one of my first fantasy trilogies that I read.
Fair enough.
Fantastic.
So, Coldest Girl in Coldtown is Holly Black mostly writes about fairies. She doesn't really write about vampires. This is, I think, is her only vampire story, actually. So it's her take on vampires. And this, I mean, it was right after Twilight and all that stuff. Yeah, so clearly she was riding high on the vampire wave that swept over the country. But I really like her take on the vampires because basically in this book, vampires used to be hidden and hunting in secret. And then this newly turned vampire Caspar decided not to kill his victim because he kind of bought the romance hype that was happening with vampires. He's like, I can be romantic.
And as an act of mercy.
Well, not really, not Caspar. He's more like the romance of it all. Like, I will leave my victims alive, whatever. And it turns out that the vampire bites infect the bitten. And if they drink human blood, within the first 88 days... of being bitten, they will turn into vampires. So basically, Caspar did this little tour of being romantic and schmoozy and leaving his victims alive, turning then into like this friggin' pandemic, pretty much, of vampires.
Yeah,
like an
global vampirism pandemic.
So he created legions of new vampires before like the governments even knew what the frick was going on. And then when the governments kind of caught up on this, they tried to start controlling this by basically putting up walls and walling in whole cities where there was outbreaks.
Yeah, it's basically, I imagine it like if vampirism was like a zombie apocalypse. Yeah. How they just tried to like round up the zombies and like quarantine them.
Yeah, pretty much. So these towns that were walled in became known as cold towns. And there's a few of them around across the United States in this book. And the one in San Francisco has gone dark.
Which is interesting we don't and know mysterious, and I sort of want to know what's happening.
The most famous one is in Springfield, and it is the most famous because one of the vampires there, Lucien Moreau, and Moreau is my kids' and my husband's last name, so I always find this to be very fascinating. I was like, I'm reading about someone with your last name. They're like, yeah, whatever.
I noted that.
He's basically taken this whole vampires into the new era, and he's basically live feeds his entire house where he hosts these massive parties and all of this and that, basically turning a profit from himself. And the book starts with our main character, Tana. She wakes up in a bathtub after a sundown party where basically a bunch of kids will go to a house, they'll party all night with the windows closed and the doors locked, and then when the sun comes out in the morning, they will go home.
Yes.
Because it's dangerous to be out after sundown because, well, there's vampires hunting.
Yeah. And because Holly Black sticks to the rules of vampirism.
Yes.
They can't come in without an invite.
There's no daylight rings.
There's no daylight rings.
No, they can come in without an invite.
Oh, but they have to force their way into a property.
Yeah. But there needs to be a way in, I guess. So the window. So she wakes up in a bathtub, and she realizes that something's not quite right. Usually at this point at sundown parties, there's a lot of people clamoring to use the bathroom, but it's all dead quiet. And it turns out that everyone who was at that party is now dead. So she finds like a massacre scene outside of the bathroom,
which sets the tone a little bit for the book. It's terrifying. And I mean, the way she holds it together is quite something. But I mean, you can feel her stress. It's really and her
well
shock
written.
And how she has that inner turmoil. Do I run away? Do I just...
So she goes into the bedroom trying to find her purse, which has her car keys because she will need them. And in there, she finds her ex-boyfriend, Aiden, who's been tied to a bed, and he's clearly been bitten. And in the corner of the room, there's a vampire chained. Yeah, there, a pretty vampire.
A very pretty vampire.
Oh my god! Like the way she describes his features, I'm like, oh yes, please. Voluptuous lips. I'm like, yes, thank you.
Dark hair,
raven feathered hair, and I'm like, yeah, I like that. And
we all know about the inky black tresses.
It's not inky black. It's raven feathered. See, Mima, you can get behind that, Jerica.
I mean, she did call her baby Raven.
Exactly, she did. And Tana decides, when she sees this, she freaks out a little bit, but then she's like, well, there's other vampires in the house. They clearly, the kind of, if we share the same enemy, then you guys are probably my friends. So Aiden, at least, she knows him, is her ex-boyfriend. And not a very good boyfriend, can I say so?
He is
like this charming guy, but he's like not...
My note says selfish user. Ugh.
Yeah. I mean, he's like, when they're dating, he cheats on her constantly, and he keeps
he turns it into a game.
Yeah, and she plays along, and she kind of loses herself in there a little bit. Yes. And I mean, he's very selfish throughout the entire book. I mean, he's charming, and he kind of isn't evil, but he's not nice.
But I also said he's like the proverbial like Casanova trope stereotype where he just like charms his way in and out of everything.
Yeah, he knows that a smile will get him in and out of every situation.
Curse of beautiful people.
But anyways, Tana decides to save both Aiden and the vampire, whose name is Gavriel. And Gavriel keeps giving her like hints. That's why she decides to save him. Like, watch out, there's more vampires in here. Like, be careful of him, he's been bitten, so on and so forth. So they manage to get out, and Gavriel is still in chains. They roll him into a blanket, stick him in the back of the car, and they start driving, or she makes Aiden drive so he can't bite her and complete his transformation.
Quick thinking. She's very quick thinking.
Yeah, and she sits with a tire iron in her hand the whole time, ready to beat him over the head if he tries to eat her. After being extremely hungover, I'm saying this girl has some
constitution of a horse.
So good. Like, I'd be like crying in a corner going like, my head hurts and everyone's dead and I don't know what to do. Yeah. But she deals. She's good. So this, she decides, because Aiden's been bitten, she needs to take him to the cold town because this is what you have to do.
Yeah, like it's like the expectation of society to do this.
It's like to self-quarantine, basically. And on the way, they stop... They stop at this gas station. Is it the gas station they find Midnight and Winter? Or is
it's at the rest stop before you go into
Because at the gas station, Aiden tries to bite her and Gavriel stops him.
Yes.
And then he drinks from Aiden.
After Gavriel breaks out of her car as if it's made of paper.
And then Tana's like, don't kill him. And Gavriel's like, why? And she's like, because I'm telling you don't kill him. And he's like, all right, fine. I won't always do what you say, that's what he says.
But this one time.
But this time I did. And then they stop at the mall. That's like the last stop before the cold town, where they sell all sorts of like vampire fetish shit. And she gets a new outfit.
It's like the Walmart for vampirism.
And that's where they meet Midnight and Winter. And Midnight and Winter are like vampire wannabes. Like, they're on a mission
Groupies
to
extraordinaire.
go to Cold Town to be vampires and live forever. No more birthdays, it's their motto. And they are twins, and they are like so super emo that I was like, oh my
painful.
God, blue hair, all of the makeup, and literally they renamed themselves Midnight and Winter, which, to be young and to think that it's cool to be called Midnight and Winter. Ooh, it's been a while, Anita. It's been a while since
What was your emo name, Leah?
God, I don't even know. What was my emo name? I'm going to have to think about that. But I did have some terrible email addresses there for a bit.
Oi.
Which we should not talk about at this point, because who knows if they're still up and running.
You might get some interesting mail in them after this.
I would not know about it, because there's no way I have access to them anymore. Anyways, so they decide to bring Midnight and Vampire with them. No, Midnight and Winter with them.
They want to be vampires.
They want to be vampires. And to Coldtown. And Gavriel says to hand him in at the gates and get a token so that she can leave. Because
that's sort of the only way out of Coldtown once you're in.
You need to have a token, like a marker. And once in Coldtown, when they're about to register in, Tana realizes Gavriel is actually the Thorn of Istra, which is... A Thorn is basically a vampire hunter, but it's a vampire hunter. So it's like... They work for like some ancient vampire and they send them out to hunt other vampires.
Yeah, they're like almost like the police of vampires. Like the vampires who go and mess up. Who do what Casper did. Yeah, and he's been captured and tortured. So he's been spending like the last 10 years in captivity and torture
underneath the Cimetière Père Lachaise in Paris, and he's been tortured for 10 years. So he's not like Gavriel.
I wouldn't say he's stable.
He's not stable, but there's like one point in this book. It's towards the end. I'm gonna have to see if I find it, but it's just like. Was his head so foggy with poems and plans that he had no room for doubts? And I found it to be like the perfect line from this book. I was like, and he speaks in poetry, and he seems mad. He goes on
quoting flickers between like here and there and yesterday and today.
But he makes them hand him in to the Coldtown and say that he was one of the kids at the massacre party and not that they found him tied up there. So they do. And she gets the marker and they get dropped into Coldtown.
Yes.
And there, as soon as they come in, is the hottest kiss ever.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So when they get in there, Gavriel kisses Tana. And I mean, things have been brewing between them.
Yeah, there's been a few moments of like...
So he's like, I just want to try to do this. Smoldering. And then he kisses her and she's like so shocked because she doesn't expect him to do that. And then she's like really kissing him back. And then she's like... One more kiss and she bites her tongue and she basically feeds him blood and it's
which is in vampire language. It's like basically you're my soulmate. I love you. We're gonna be in this forever. Yeah.
Then Gavriel disappears. He runs off to do his thing. He wanted to go to Coldtown. He's in Coldtown. He's gonna go do his thing now.
So it's clear that he has another motive for being there, but she can only like surmise.
But they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Midnight and Winter has been on message boards, so they actually have connections within Coldtown. So they managed to find them somewhere to stay. And this is a terrible idea because so Midnight wants to basically she turns on specifically Tana because she goes there, they drug Tana and Aiden and they stick them in the same room so that Aiden will bite her.
The only way to become a vampire is to get bitten by a vampire. And I think we didn't mention why, we know why Aiden is there, but Tana... She got nicked on the leg.
Yeah, so she might be infected. She's not sure.
Putting her in the cold category. So if she feeds on human blood, she'll turn.
It's not sure. And I don't think she's actually cold from the scratch. Because she doesn't get cold until later. But they stick them in the same room and then they feed Aiden blood. And then once he's been fed blood, he's going to die and come back as a new vampire. And when he's a new vampire, he's going to be very hungry. So they basically, by locking Tana in there with him, has given him a snack.
Yeah,
and
she's
not very happy about it. So she does this magical feat of climbing up a wall, jumping to a chandelier, and making her way out of a skylight. And she meets this boy, Jameson, and he has a bird on his a white crow. That's his friend. And he brings her to see Valentina, who works in a shop, and she gets some new clothes
because all of her things is basically
But
like ripped apart, and I think like
any outfit she gets on, it just does destroyed. Not stay clean and for very long.
I wonder if it's like a outer depiction of the trauma that she goes through.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, she gets covered in blood like all the time. Like
poor
literally
girl.
all the time. So she gets new outfit, and Gavriel's also given her a bag of money and a necklace, and it turns out that this necklace is like really old and valuable. So she gets the clasp fixed so she can actually wear it. And then she has to go back to see Aiden because when she escaped out the window, he took her marker so that she would come back for him because he's a selfish little prick. And when they come back, it turned out that the idiots that locked them together thought that Aiden had his appetite sated by Tana. So they opened the door and a couple of people died.
Yeah, basically all vampire... hell breaks loose. And
then he manages to turn Midnight, and then she's going to go and turn Winter, and then she drinks too much and he dies. And then Midnight it kind of snaps a little bit for her. She's not...
No, I don't think Winter deserves that end.
He didn't really seem to want to be a vampire.
No, he just did it because of the twin codependency thing, and he didn't deserve to die like that, because I think he was pretty nice and level-headed, actually. Yeah. Unlike his sister. So Valentina... and Tana goes to a party at Lucien's house, and they're there to help Gavriel, I believe. Why do they go there? I can't remember why they go there. I can't remember why they go, but they go anyways. They go to the party. Valentina, Jameson's mom helps them get in, so she goes with Valentina, and she's there, and they're partying, and then she runs into Midnight, and Midnight basically attacks her and calls her a bitch and that she should have died, and Winter should never have died, and then she tries to kill her, and then Tana kills her instead. Yeah. And then Lucien, who owns the house, he's all like, Lucien Moreau, he's all like, what? You killed a vampire in my house? I don't think so. And he tries to throw her in his like feeding cages, I guess. Yeah, and he keeps some people in cages.
And then he sees her necklace, and he's like, I recognize this necklace. And she's like, yeah, Gavriel's my friend. And then he's like, so then he takes her... Oh, she kills a vampire too there. She kills the guard, but that's maybe later.
Yeah, that's later.
So she gets taken to see Gavriel, and he puts her in a bedroom. Mm-hmm. Because Gavriel's gone there, and he confronts Lucien, and Lucien kills Elizabeth.
Yes, because there's a connection with them in the past where...
Yeah, Lucien is Gavriel's maker.
Yes, and the girls.
And the girl, Elizabeth, yeah. But she's in Elizabeth's room, this I know, because she wakes up there and she's chained to the bed, and then Gavriel is there, and he's like... she's been bitten at this point, so she's cold, which means she has 88 days to turn a vampire, or to try to
Midnight bits her, didn't she?
Yeah, and to try to sweat out the infection and become human again. And he tries to get her to stay there, but she knows that Valentina's been captured, so she needs to go and help Valentina. So she goes down, she kills a guard.
Back to the prison.
She gets the keys, she gets dragged back up again. There's a few turnaround there.
Yeah. Back and forth.
And then she gets a message through to Jameson, and he gets a message to his mom, and then her mom comes to help.
Yeah, because the mom is like one of Lucien's top people, in his organization.
Like, one of his executive assistant. No. So she gets help, and they free Valentina and all the other ones. Because there's a spider coming, and the spider is like the old vampire, and because Gavriel seems to like Tana, Lucien fake friends her, but she knows it's not real, and he tries to also kind of keep her close to control Gavriel, and he has this wacko plan that they're gonna attack the spider, and as it turns out, Gavriel is the spider, and he's been just trying to two-time Lucien. And in the middle of all of this, it turns out that Tana's little sister, Pearl, who's 12 years old, has decided to go to Coldtown because she's a big fan of Lucien Moreau, and she wants to go and help Tana.
I mean, like any typical 12-year-old, just gets caught up in the glamour and the image on the outside without looking a little bit deeper. I mean, we've all been guilty of that at the age of 12.
Yeah. And then Tana needs to go and find Pearl, but Aiden finds her first, and then they party for one night. That's pretty good, because she kills Lucien. God, I'm terrible at explaining what happens. I'm sorry. You guys have to read this book, because I'm not doing it justice.
That's Aiden's like only redeeming feature is like how he is with Pearl and how he goes and finds her and protects her and keeps her safe and is like his only redeeming factor in the entire book. How he, as soon as he hears she's there, he goes out and finds her in the street because she just walks into Coldtown pretending to be bitten and cold, and it's a super dangerous place to be.
It's not a good place to be.
No, and like the YouTube videos that get streamed don't really show that gritty, dirty, dangerous side of Coldtown. So she decides to follow her sister there because there's some trauma in that household.
Yeah, but with Tana's mum, we don't have to go into that.
No, but anyhow,
it's trauma in the house, or in the family for sure.
Yeah, so the sisters are very strongly connected. So I understand why Pearl wanted to go find her sister. Yeah. But anyway, so when Adrian hears about this, or Aiden, when he hears about this, he goes and finds her and protects her and looks after her. And like you would expect Big Tana, Brother to be with his little sister.
I mean, Tana, she's like, she needs to go after Pearl, but she knows Pearl is coming to Lucian's house. And then, and in this kind of during the daytime when they're stuck in the house and Tana is going cold, Gavriel's with her, and there's some blood exchanges going on with them, some sassy blood.
Because the old school way of grooming someone to becoming your vampire was to feed them a little bit of your blood at a time.
She sees that this plan that Gavriel has to with Lucian, where they're supposed to kill the spider, she figures out that Gavriel's the spider, and then Lucian threatens her and tries to kill her, and then she ends up killing him for Gavriel. And this is like the... she walks away without even talking to Gavriel, and both of them are like, she's like, frick, I robbed him of his revenge, and he's like, fuck, I should never have put her in this situation. And then she has this night at the Eternal Ball with Pearl where she said Aiden promised her she could stay and party all night, and then they hang out and they get drunk and it's all the friends together basically, and then they bring Pearl back to the gate and they send her home, and then Jameson takes Tana to this root basement where she's going to sweat out the infection because she doesn't want to turn
She made him promise
vampire.
that he would do that. They would go lock her up and leave her.
She goes in there, she's set up, she's like handcuffs herself to the rail, and she's got like food and water, and she sets up her camera and she's going to record basically her sweating the infection out to show like the reality of what it's like.
Yeah, because the eternal ball and the glamorousness is all that people ever see.
Yeah. And then the door opens and she's like, fuck, Jameson, I told you not to come back and let me in. And then it's Gavriel, and
the most swoon-worthy moment in the whole
and he's
book.
Like, I brought stuff to read, I'm going to keep you company. And
he brought her like comics and magazines, and like, he's like willing to suffer through it with her. And she's like, no, you're going to let me go. And then he says, I am actually going to read this part, it's my favorite. Yes, it's beautiful.
And he goes... He paused, seeming to steel himself, and then began to speak very quickly. I love you, you see, and I fear I have no way to say or show it that isn't terrible, except coming here. I would kill everyone in the world for you if you wanted. He seemed to notice the look that passed over her face before rushing her. Or not, obviously, but I thought you might rather have me read aloud. He picked up an old issue of Rolling Stones from the stack, lifting it vaguely, and sit with you, like a normal person who loved you might, if you had a normal illness. And since you don't, I'm just right for what you have. Oh, it's so nice. And then she answers...
It's so beautiful.
I'd rather you didn't kill everyone in the world. Yes, that's true. And I have feelings for you too. Big, weird, crazy feelings. It's a rare enough thing to find someone who can see me the way I am, no less to peer down into dark parts of my heart, the parts of me even I don't want to look at. You did that, and you laughed at my jokes too. So I'm scared because you're not just not human, you're also not like anyone. There's nobody like you in all the world, and it's you I want you, and I hate wanting things, and I especially hate admitting I want them.
Yeah, it's
and
beautiful.
It's just so perfect.
And I love the fact that he doesn't expect her to change for him.
No,
that if she's a human, he's happy.
Yeah, he's going to stay with her, and if she can't manage, if she turns vampire, they will be together, and if she doesn't, they will be fine. So it's kind of like the perfect ending too, because it ends there, so we don't actually know where they end up. And as much as first time I read it, I'm like, what comes next? Now I'm so happy with this ending because it doesn't ruin it.
Yes.
Like, for me, they're just happy now. Like, they stay happy.
Yeah, I'm okay with that ending because you can imagine your own story of it. You can imagine perhaps she turns and perhaps she doesn't, and it's either way you know that the characters are going to be okay.
Yeah.
Which doesn't leave me in any like withdrawal and character anxiety and like what is happening and there's so many loose ends. No.
For sure. And another thing that I really picked up on at the end is that another one of my things that I complained about a lot on this podcast is that in books, people always describe smells as people smelling like 3 different things. And I find it fascinating. It's like, he smells like roses, peaches, and cedarwood. And I'm like, okay, who the frick knows that? Like, who can pick out these smells? It's not like I go around sniffing people. I go like, you smell like smoke and seaweed. You know, like, I don't know.
That'd be kind of weird. It's like, this is my friend Anita. She smells like unicorns and candy cotton.
Yeah.
Like,
and I asked Erica about that, and she's like, well, I smelled my kid, and they smell like spit. You know, like, and it's true. I mean, but you wouldn't do it. But at this point in this book, at one point she goes like, she relaxed against him, inhaling the scent of smoke and bleach and the faint trace of gore. And I'm like, yes,
that's realistic.
Is a real scent. This is real. And he probably does not smell like that all the time. But at this point,
but in that moment, I think it was after he killed somebody. So
yeah, for sure. He's always killing people.
It is Gavriel. He's a bit unstable.
He's killing people left, right, and center.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I really liked it. I loved that it was realistic. Like, I like to read books where it's all these awesome fantasy creatures that I grew up reading about, but it's in our times today or modern times. Like, to imagine what would that actually be like.
Yeah.
So I really like this.
You have some more Holly Black to read then, because Darkest Part of the Forest, the modern day fairy tales, and
on there.
Of course the Folk of the Air. I will reread them again. I have read them 3 times. I kid you not.
3 times?
Yeah, this was the 3rd time reading Coldest Girl in Coldtown.
Which you speed read in like 2 days.
I had to skip chapters. It was brutal. But no, I mean, I love Holly Black. I love the way she writes. I love her language, and I love that her characters are well-developed characters. You always know them in a way. And that
you can relate to them. There's things about them that's human, and like you can see, oh, I would perhaps do that in that situation.
Yeah. And we understand why these fantastical creatures would choose these girls. They're not just Sarah from Whistler.
Or Bella from Forks.
Or Bella from Forks. So, you know, it's not that their blood smells different or anything. It's because of their personalities. It's because of the choices they make. It's because they go out there and they're brave and they save people and they care deeply and they, you know, it's all of these things. And I mean...
This leads to the perfect quote I found of Gavriel, where he's like, Tana, in all my life, though there have been many times I prayed for it, no one has ever saved me.
Yeah.
No one but you.
Yes.
So imagine a vampire who's clearly older than the average person, telling you that in their extended long life, no one has ever given them a second thought. And she's the first person in all that time to do that. And I mean, Gavriel, when he was a human, he had a bit of a bully of an older brother, and he didn't have the easiest life himself. No. And had like that typical dutiful son role. And then when he became a vampire, he said, fuck it all, and just did everything in the opposite way. But he still comes back to that deep down. He is that kind person, which is one of my other favorite quotes, where it goes about like what the vampirism virus does to you. And my favorite part was like, it's you distilled down, you boiled down like a sauce, but it's you as you always were deep down inside. But I love that. It's like the real you comes out.
For sure. Yeah. But I also like, in a way, that Holly Black does not glamorize the world of vampires.
Yes, I wrote that too!
There's a lot of it, like, at one point in the book, it's a red-eyed girl in a silver dress past Tana splattered with blood, jolting her out of any pretense that this was anything but a dangerous fishbowl of monsters, a snake, a cage full of mice.
I love that.
And then at some point, I also love the way she describes Gavriel, because it's like, she's like, he's not, Tana began, but she let the sentence trail off. He was melodramatic sometimes. and then she describes him as like, yes, you're very, very dangerous. I get that. You're prone to some very theatrical brooding.
Theatrical brooding.
But don't let yourself mistake that for some kind of inner corruption.
It makes me think of that quote. It's like, is it me? Am I the drama? Sort of thing.
But it's very like, all the way through this book. Like, I like that Tana is not a fangirl. She's not a groupie. She doesn't want to go to... She doesn't believe in the romance of the vampires. It's not what's interesting to her. She likes Gavriel because he's Gavriel, not because he's a vampire.
Yeah, she... Like, the fact that he's a vampire is the only thing that maybe makes her hesitate.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's not like a... vampire. No, exactly. She's more like,
and now,
awesome guy, but vampire. What do I do?
And now she's like, could potentially become a vampire. Don't really want to. We'll try to not do it, you know?
I don't really want... I want to be with him, but not a vampire. So, yeah. But I also like that she takes risks.
Yeah.
Sometimes to the detriment of herself.
Stupid risk, I would say.
Stupid risks, but she always does it with the intention that she's going to help somebody. Even if it's someone like her ex-Odin who perhaps doesn't deserve it, but she does it anyway.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, so would you recommend this book? I mean, you know that I recommend this book because, well, I recommended it to you and to like everyone I met ever. But would you recommend this book?
I definitely would. Yes, I like it. I like that basically anyone from any age, reasonable, can read it.
Yeah.
Because the story is good, the characters are solid, the development and the arc is good. I like it. I really, really like it. It's fantastic. Thank you for making me read it.
Well, thank you for coming on a short notice and co-hosting the pod with me since Jerica decided to prioritize having a baby.
Selfish.
So selfish.
We're joking.
Come back to us.
We love you and Raven.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. I will either by a text or perhaps a quick pop-up give you a feedback on the pre-Coldest Girl of Coldtown story. Yeah.
Cannot wait. So, guys, thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
We'd Rather Be Reading is an original podcast by Jerica Seron and Leah Sanfö. The music for The Penguins, written and performed by David Allred from the album The Transition, courtesy of Erased Tapes. Please check him out on Spotify and check us out on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram at We'd Rather Be Reading and on Twitter at We'd Rather Read. You can also email us at we'dratherbereadingthepod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.